how you doing, huh? So, how's Donnie World doing by you? Huh? I'm out there in the deep green, and all I see is beauty. Right? And because of the economic collapse, all the roads around us. I mean, I showed you a number of videos of the quality of our roads, and those videos were done 2 months ago, right? And it has gotten severely worse. And still, the big trucks are chewing up the roads because money counts, people don't. So, and so Donnie's put all these like collateral damage tariffs, and the damage is us. Hey, loud and clear, brother. Good. I was wondering about that because my last one was kind of chunky. I was at the library, and you'd think the library would have a good Wi-Fi, but you heard what it sounded like. And what's truly interesting, Donnie, of all the things he's cut the budget for libraries, like county libraries, city libraries, right? There's a nonprofit entity within the Smithsonian that basically gives about 100 million out to all the small libraries around the country, all the libraries that would service the mega community. And I have 3 or 4 friends from different libraries around here, and their budget was just unplugged. No, we're thinking about it. They're missing 30% of their budget. What are they going to do? So there were a lot of programs that were at those libraries. There were programs for giving assistance to drug addicts, to get off drugs. There was assistance for people to go there to get assistance dealing with their Social Security or whatever, right? Next, he will be book burning. They already are. Come on. They just have this thing going into the Supreme Court where parents will be able to whatever they don't like being taught. If there's a book in 3rd grade where they're talking about human rights, the parent can have their child not go to that class, go to the gym and they're already burning books in America. Right? It's you look at the authoritarian handbook, and we're right in there, right in there with Greece and Turkey and Albarn and all the rest. We're number 43. We're below Estonia. We're below, and not just diss Estonia. It's a very nice country. They're trying to do their best, but anyway. And we're seemingly on the edge of nuclear war in the Mideast and nuclear war in Europe. And thanks all to Donald Trump. And right now, if Donald Trump said, I'm not taking, it's like all hands on deck, we're going after China, blah, blah, blah. But, we want to make a beautiful commitment to having them to kiss the ring, And China says, we don't need America. Right? And China owns more of American debt than anybody else. And China's selling it. And as they do, what happens is the American dollar is losing its grip on being the primary money to finance whatever you want to do. So our bonds are like it's like that. The number one thing that's going to increase inflation in America is what's happening to our bond market, right? And our the pogo stick of the Wall Street has basically, guys in Donnie's camp are acting. They're shorting stocks just minutes before Donnie announced the new, we're going to put 40%, 50% on everybody, and the market, and those guys bet that the market's going to collapse, and boy, did they make a lot of money. And yes, Tesla is getting just ravaged. But Elon is shorting his own stock, so he's making lots. He's personally making a lot of money. People who own Tesla stock, no, not. I don't think Tesla's ever coming out of this because their product is not as when they were the only kid on the block. They were the group thing, but now their product is not a tenth of what anything else is, right? But again, all of this is irrelevant because the only thing that's going to this is a great thing. I think Donnie is the best thing since sliced bread because it's going to force everyone who is, has their bias. I'm not racist. I just don't think that those kind of people that the other shouldn't be here, that women should, be property, and, but I'm not prejudiced. I'm not sexist. I'm not any of the above things. I just, those people are going to have a rude awakening because they're going to find out they're the other. So I'm surrounded. I live in, that's why do you think I wear a red coat all the time? Because everyone is mega, and I wear this hat all the time, right? I'm one of the good old boys, which I am, because, I don't know how many years ago it was when I could still see and I could still lift a gun up, this one guy, we said, so we got a militia, blah, blah, blah. And I said, do you want to join? I said, well, where do you guys hang out? So he took, I had to go blindfolded to their secret location. Anyway, so we're there and we're making hot dogs and I'm looking around and I start picking mushrooms and dandelions and other things. And I take a frying pan and I make, what are you doing? I said, this is called survival living, all of the food that you have MRIs and MREs or whatever those things. Have you ever eaten one of those things? And and they got those little weenies and I make this thing and the guy's, wow, this is great. How'd you make this? I said, you saw me. I just went to the woods and picked this stuff. How'd you know this? Well, your grandma showed me. You never showed me. I said, no. She told me that she tried to many, many times and that you were too interested in other stupid stuff to even care about your own culture, which you constantly go on about that you want to protect, cancel culture, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I think Donnie's great because I would say already in less than 100 days, he has done more damage to the American government, the bureaucracy, the economy of the world than any other single individual has ever done without, causing a war. But he's causing a war. But that's, because he's, in Ukraine. I'm just going to walk away. I've got to take my toys and go home, right? And that's why the Europe, and this is another unexpected thing. Europe is like stood up. They realize, America's definitely not going to have our back. So they may even be fighting with Putin against us. So they are doubling in a severe way and putting forces right on the border of Russia. All those countries like Finland and Norway and other countries that are right on Russia's border. They are like getting at it. And so in the EU and NATO are like, we don't care what America's doing. We are going to protect Europe, right? So I would say, and Russia has actually had the biggest losses. Yes, Ukraine's a little country. It's like 1/17 the economic, physical size. When the war started 3 years ago, Russia had 16,000 brand new tanks, state of the art, right? And had in the warehouse another 90,000 tanks from 1960 on. And so, poor little Ukraine only had 300 tanks that were like 1960 version of Russian stuff, right? So, and they kicked butt, and they're still kicking butt. Now, Russia has lost dead maybe 1 million soldiers. Ukraine probably has lost in total, meaning the women and children that have been, stolen from Ukraine and brought into Russia, the soldiers that have been taken as giving up, and no one knows where any of those people are in Russia, right? They could be dead, who knows? But physically, there's close to 500,000 soldiers and civilians who've died in this war in Ukraine, right? Another 300,000 that are severely injured. So that's a big hit to a country that has only 40 million people or so, right? But they're still kicking butt. And, Russia's doing their big offense, right? But if Europe gives them lots of, so NATO has two F-16s, right? And in the last 3 years, Ukraine has gotten maybe 20, 30 F-16s, but it has trained a ton of people to fly them and to service them, right? And all NATO has to do is repaint, a couple hundred F-16s, A's that are like 20, 30 years old, but still in well working shape, and give a new paint job of Ukrainian colors, and then have pilots who've been training on simulators and going up in the handful of planes they have, and they could overnight have 300 F-16s. And if you took those planes and put anti-personnel or ordnance on it and use them as the point of a wedge and just go at the Russians that are trying, they're losing 1,000 men to death for every foot into Ukraine they're taking. So you blow through that, right? And then just keep going into Crimea and blow through that and get to that bridge and say, okay, we're heading into Russia. And then Russia freaks out and does something really nasty. And then the Europeans said, well, okay, we're bringing in our forces to, we're going to bring in a ton of anti-aircraft protection. And we're going to, so, and then, I see I can see Vlad using nukes because he don't care. He don't care if his own people get nuked, because he is so. The Ukrainians are very, very conservative about putting their people in harm's way. Russia's not. So that's just Ukraine, right? You look at Israel and Palestine, and there's so many. Well, it's the Palestinians' book. They're not. They're not. They didn't get a haircut. They're not being respectful. They're not. Well, they're like too busy dying. Then they say, no, we want a unconditional, stop of the fighting, and let's go to the table. And that's not the. See, and it's not the poor Jewish people. Right? Back in the 40s, when all the accords were written up, that part, it was supposed to be Palestine for everybody, right? It was supposed to be, the people who live there, the 2-point-something million Palestinians that were there, which were mostly Christians, not Muslims, and Jews. And then the Zionists came in and said, oh no, we're going to have a separate Jewish state. And, but it's not, because you can be an Israeli citizen and be Christian. And, they have a bunch of Palestinians who are Islamic, about 15 to 20%. And they're there, but they have to all pledge allegiance to Zionism. And so that's, and that's, what we call an authoritarian government, right? And so and pretty much what the modern authoritarian government is a competitive authoritarian government, because there's no real difference between Republicans and Democrats. Look at the Democrats. They're just lying low because that's part of their script. People don't want to believe that all of this is scripted, that there is outside transnational state, like Stan Lee's Captain America, Hail Hydra. That's what's there. After World War II, 70,000 Nazis came into our country when it, the guys, the National Security Act disseminated all those people. That's where we got the CIA, because all these Nazis, we've been fighting the Russians for the last 4 years. We have all kinds of intelligence in there. And they gave us all the wrong. Oh, Russia's a big threat. Russia's a big threat. Once we got satellites in the 60s, Eisenhower and Kennedy saw that Russia was not a big threat. There wasn't a missile gap. There wasn't a bomber gap. They didn't have anything. And they're all in the club. Yes, very much what George Carlin was saying, they're all in the club and you're not. It's never for one reason, less their cotton sucks. Anyway, and this is true. And all of these entities that are part of the club, they have different agendas, and sometimes they fight each other, and sometimes, but more or less, they are. Message retracted. Okay, Jamie got a little hot under the collar, I guess. Anyway, so it's we have to at this moment start thinking of an alternative mechanism to the political systems that we have on this planet. We can no longer be consumptive capitalist societies. There's enough here for everyone. And with the advent of AI and total AI-driven manufacturing, we have enough for everyone to live in a very comfortable life. I mean, everyone on this planet. In Africa, the Mideast, Asia, where all those people are dying, close to 20, 30 million people die every year of, starvation diseases. When you don't get enough calories, when you can see your bones, yes, your immune system doesn't exist anymore, so we have to, and everyone speaks so, oh, I'm a Christian, I love it. No, they don't. They have basically all, it was like unbelievable to get 3 different churches to work together to make our food pantry, have a supply chain to survive the big storm we had in September. That's why we were successful. We actually had a supply chain, and it just got bigger and bigger and bigger, where the federal government, state government, county government didn't have nothing. I mean, the roads are still destroyed. They haven't done squat. There's, close to 600 people up in those hills. Everything, they got wiped out. The other day, I kind of went forth and went up in those necks of the woods. And that's the only way for me to get out of where I'm at. I mean, that, the state, federal road, gone. The county roads, gone. When I say gone, these roads go around this gigantic lake. And they were designed for pickup trucks and, slow moving tractors. They got these gigantic, because, the corporations still got to get those trucks through to make their profit. I don't care what happens to the road. They're not going to pay for it. Right? And they are just chewing it up. And the large corporations that are, building these, we're expected to have $19,000 million homes through a 20 square mile range of this Sawtooth Mountain range that I live in, between the Appalachian and the Blue Ridge. $19,000 million homes. Right now, there are already probably 1,000 of those, and you see those homes, and they all have 5, 6 cars in their driveway. Audis and Mercedes and 4x4s, and every kid has their own car. Where and the holler folks, they don't even have a car. And you exponentially put that out across America. Like where I'm at, it's just a microcosm. It's really sad. The deep green, one of the greatest things about the deep green was the diversity of the animals. There was everybody there. Cougars and panthers and you name it, they were there. There's no animals, period. And it used to be a bird sanctuary. Now there's just a handful. There used to be just tons. I got butterfly bushes everywhere, and the other thing that they put their chrysalises on, there's none. There's nobody home. And all the bumblebees that were around us, the guys that pollinate, there are none. Zip, zero. The only things that are around are ants. That's it. A ton of ants, and they eat death, right? So, I would say within 2 weeks, you're going to start to see empty shelves in Target and Walmart's, right? And the prices are going to go through. I see they're already, I only have about $48 of food stamp money, right? So I'm a very careful consumer. And all the food, I work at the biggest out here, right? And I'm connected to all the other ones to see how they're doing and help. And people say, in the board said, why do you go talk to the other church? You can't get. I said, no, we have so much stuff. We burn, 8% of everything we get in because we don't have any space. We're getting more and more stuff. So we burn brand new stuff. We almost cost, back in September, October, before the election, we got all of these Crocs, right? And there were a ton, a ton, like maybe 1,500 children's Crocs, and we had, from that size all the way up to 11, right? So all the big sizes got gone, taken away, and big fat white guys with, I'm being pejorative here, bib overalls, would take like 10, 20s, and the ladies with clipboard would say, oh, that's fine. But some Mexican comes and takes 2 pairs. Oh, no, you can only have, our little organization is, it has its limitations by their bias. And I'm constantly, I got my Bible with me all the time, and I can constantly pick out things that Jesus. But see, the other thing I tell different Christians, I said, how come there's nothing written in the New Testament by Jesus? Was he stupid? All these other Paul, Mark, Luke, they're all writing stuff, but and they come like 200 years after Jesus. So what's the story here? Yeah, they boy, they don't want to hear that one. They don't want to hear me talking like that. Oh, back a few, maybe a year ago, before the event, when I kept saying we got to organize, we got to. They're going to close that school down. Oh, they'll never close the school down. It's been there 70 years. The church has been here 125 years. Blah 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 blah. I said no. They're going to. The rich people coming in. They don't want to pay. They don't want to pay taxes for your kids to go to school. They want to put everyone in that jail that they're remodeling, and they're going to put all your kids into a jail. And they did. All the windows in this new school have bars on them. That's not indicative of just this neck of the woods. It's every kind of socioeconomic group across America. I talk to a lot of people, and what's really sad is the academics are so stuck in their tenured little hollers. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to say anything. They're scared to talk about anything, except it's, what's going on in the Gaza. It's the Palestinians' fault for not, talking the right way. We shouldn't use those really upsetting things that they say. And in reality, those upsetting things that the Zionists get all upset about are the things that the Zionists said themselves in 1947, right? The other cute thing that most people don't know, who started Hamas? The IDF did. Mossad did, because they wanted a loyal opposition, and they're getting it. So, read message above, please. The message retracted one. Go to channel. I have no idea what to do. Anyway. Digital crap. Anyway. So we have to come up with an and there's a Singing Cedars series of books written in the 80s about this woman in Russia who lived in the woods. She was like a wood nymph, and this guy saw her, and go read those series. I forget her name, but they put out a great philosophic point of view. And this is when Glasnost was kind of happening. And Russia picked up on it, right? And did a lot of things that these people, started what or basically would be called eco villages, small sustainable villages that made everything themselves and shared with everyone. That they censor messages. Yeah, it does. It pretty much, I mean, they let me do this, but they make it difficult. They switch protocols and do all kinds of crazy things. And I don't care, you know? I haven't, really done. I did something yesterday in the library, but it went so poorly that I just, it was like maybe 15, 20 minutes. And I had I don't know how they drained my battery so quickly, but now I got unplugged in, so they can't drain this battery. So we have to think about, act locally. No, think globally, act locally, right? And I've been doing that for the last 70 years, and it works very well. It really does. And if you inject, have a good time. I used to be known as the art party ringleader, cultural provocateur. I mean, that was my thing. Oh, here's a good one. The other day, I got a phone call. Normally, I don't carry this thing around, but I was in the man cave and I was praying, and the phone rings. And sometimes the phone rings and the announce, the bing, 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 bing doesn't ring. But looked over, it wasn't going bing, 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 bing. And so, I opened it up and said, hello. And he goes, is this Al Bob? And I said, yeah. He goes, well, are you so-and-so? And I said, I think so. He said, do you know so-and-so? I said, I think so. And so, I said, what's up? He goes, well, I'm a stringer for the New York Times, and you helped start a thing called, you were one of the founders of ABC No Rio, and you were one of the founders of the TV show Potato Wolf. You were one of the founders of PS1. You were one of the founders of Outstanding Renewal, and you were one. And he just went down the list of all the things I was. And he goes, I got some of your photos and some of your writings, and they're truly amazing. So they were having this big party because they turned ABC No Rio into a museum of how cultural will change for the better economics and da 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 da. And that museum is based on a thesis I wrote in the 1970s because I noticed that when you took certain things away, the largest element to our GDP was art. Anyway, so he goes, so I was, hired to, because, they didn't have to pay this guy. He was a stringer. He said, they wanted me to find out if you were dead because everyone thinks you're dead. And they had this big opening, or they're going to have this big opening. And they said, everyone knows that you have all these pictures of this time because you constantly gave pictures of copies of what you took. And we have a good deal of that, but we know that you have a zillion times more. I said, yeah, I got books and books. I have about 100 books. I've got 20,000 single photographs that are really great of that period and other things. And he goes, well, so they wanted me to write your obituary. And I said, so what you write so far? Read it to me, and it was like, wow. And they were going to put that in the New York Times saying that I was dead, but they had to confirm whether I was alive or dead. And I said, well, I guess I'm still here. So that's when I had a big rush of all my friends all over the world who I knew at that time, got a hold of me. A few of my friends, I was still in contact, so they called them. They got my phone number. So the other day, I had just a ton of. It was raining outside. I had all these great phone calls of how everyone said, only you would have your obituary written in the New York Times before you died so you could see what people would say about you. So I thought that was pretty cool. And I'm about to next month have open heart surgery, and next month after that have my hip replaced, and the month after that my knees replaced because I'm at a point where I can't walk, and even though I feel okay, I'm not in any pain. Meaning, I don't feel. Meaning, pain is always there. I can feel it all the time. Anyone has neuropathy knows what I'm talking about. But because I meditate and pray, it takes that pain gives me an opportunity to exercise my abilities to put pain over here and put God center where God belongs. Right? When I say God, I don't mean any Christian God or anybody's God, the moving force of the universe, whatever that is. Right? And we sure don't. Our liturgy is like forget about it. Right? It's basically. Donald Trump is a great example of what Christianity has been for the last 2,500 years. That's why I love Donald Trump. He does not hide anything. He said exactly what he was going to do. People say, oh, he's not going to do that. And he's doing it. But he's not doing it. He is just a game show host. That's all he is. And, it's the, hidden hand, the Hail Hydra, the whatever you want to call it. And all my scholastic, contemporaries all go, well, you don't know what you're talking about because, blah, 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 blah. And all they're doing is reading their own script and they don't even know it. See, that is the problem. That's the beauty of Orwell's 1984. He really got it. He described it, especially those 30 pages where he's talking to his buddy who is rewriting the dictionary. So just like, they want to get rid of every word about DEI. I mean, that's exactly what's going on in 1984. And his buddy was writing a new dictionary, taking certain adjectives and nouns and changing the grammar. So it would always be a positive reflection of Big Brother, right? So, and then, Winston's job was to rewrite the history from yesterday, not like from way, 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 but yesterday, right? And so his friend's obituary comes across his desk and he just like throws it into the memory hole and the guy never existed. So it was nice to get all those people all riled up that I was dead and what my, obituary said before I died and before they start throwing things down the memory hole. So, and that's what's going to happen. That's what Donald Trump, he is like so vividly following that script. And that's why Orwell, Orwell was, following his own script, because he was what would be considered by Marx the loyal opposition, right? Giving everyone a heads up, well, this is what's coming in the next 100 years and just kind of get used to it. Just like Gene Roddenberry did the same thing with Star Trek. Hey, this is going to come along. We're heading towards the Federation because we're already in communication with all these extraterrestrials. But we all, all of us in power know that the basic format of the human won't be able to handle it, at least not at the moment. So they have Steven Spielberg and all those people make movies to get people. When it does come out, and I would say that this year probably would be the year that those guys land on the front lawn of the White House. And we have a Klaatu, Baraktu, Nektu experience. Yep, they censor messages. Yep. So none of what they consider power actually matters, right? If they came and put the black thing over my head, I'd be like Tweety Bird. They don't know me too well, do they? Basically, I would say, basically, you got to go get the ambulance. You got to go get the wheelchair. I guess I really can't walk. And they'd hit me with a gun. Well, now I really can't walk, And what's great about the deep green, no one can find me. What's bad about the deep green, no one can find me. So that's kind of why I'm going to get these operations, because if they're successful, yeah, I'll be better. If they're not, I'll be dead. To win both sides, right? Because I have done so much stuff because I had a few books next to me when the guy from the Times called, and I just started looking at the pictures. He goes, "Can we do?" I said, "Like, no, I can't do. My neighborhood won't let me do face talk with you." But I said, "Here's a bunch of different people who have a lot of my photos. Go call." I gave him all the phone numbers. So you go call them. He said, "Well, I talked to a lot of those people. That's how I got about 10 of these photos." I said, "Then you know what you should do? You should rent a." I said, "Do you have a car?" No. I said, "Rent a car." I said, "Do you have a driver's license?" "Oh yeah, I have a driver's license." I said, "Well, rent a car on New York Times nickel and drive down and see me. Stay here for a week. Right? I'll show you everything that's going on around here, and it'll blow your shorts off because it is what's going to happen to the rest of America." And I know all these people. I can have you. I'll take the pictures for you. Give me your phone. I'll take an Al Bob photo. I almost got Pulitzer prizes for back in the day. And basically, being on the list is as good as I have a number of friends who got Nobel prizes, a number of mentors, right? And they said, once you get a Nobel Prize, it's like you die. You know, your drive, your this. They just invite you to cocktail parties and to give lectures, but no longer are you in the lab doing any kind of real work. You're just being a Nobel laureate. Right? And so, not winning a Pulitzer, but almost, being on the short list one year. And the work, everyone said, well, your work was the best, but it was a bit too upsetting. Photographed a lynching, a state-sponsored lynching. See all these things? My sister tried to kill me when I was 2. She tried to stab my eyes out with a metal bunny, and she couldn't quite hit my eyes, so she kept hitting my head, which is as hard as a rock, and just because the bunny had metal ears, and those are all, for my sis. But I love her still. I love all my brothers and sisters. I do my best to be sweet and kind to him. My poor brother, he doesn't respond to anybody. He's like locked himself. He's worse than John. So anyway, what were we talking about? It's occurring. My memory is still pretty sharp about the past and things done and what I got to do and how we're going to do this and how we're going to do. You know what? I really have. It's like here's these glasses, right? And then I take them off and I put them, and my hat falls on top of them, and then I don't know where they are. I can't remember what I did 3 seconds ago. So my remote control for my lights in my man cave, I had them in my hand. I turned the lights off, and then when I went to look to turn the lights on, I couldn't find it because I didn't remember exactly where I put it in the space station. I showed you. I got so much. I live in a space. My sisters, my cousin Donna, who's an interesting young girl, and she had really wackadoodle parents who weren't. It's like my parents. My parents were wackadoodle. They shouldn't have been parents, but they weren't bad. They didn't beat us. They didn't starve us. They did their best, right? And the same with my cousins. It wasn't really the worst. And my cousins on my mother's side, kind of turned out better because their parents were, kind of pigeonholed at the turn of the century, and from 1890s to 1900 to 20th century. They didn't. They were Irish and they were German, and what else? And they were also Cherokee. So they had a trifecta of the turn century prejudice. So they were always striving. Now my dad was 100% Italian, but he was a white Italian. His dad was a Northern Italian, so he's really white and he's really handsome. And so my father hung out with all the rich kids in the city he grew up in, and so he didn't experience the depravity, the poverty of what the Italians in the Five Corners were experiencing, and what the Irish experienced in the Five Corners, 50 years before then. Let's see. Can you help me with that? What am I supposed to help you with, unknown? Go back and see if unknown said anything. What's your problem?
Yeah.
Can you help me with that? You got to ask me a question. So ask me the question. And Jamie and I, how is Johnny? Johnny is in a sad shape because he's up at the school. He's been up there for the last 10 years. All the first 3 I was there, but he has nobody up there. And he's like, you want to do it, but
Can I use your truck tomorrow to do some of the stuff?
see. Well, I'll read it to you since I can do this. And,
Thank you. Yeah, well, we'll see. Thank you.
So here's Johnny's talking to me.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So Johnny constantly says that he's not gay, and he's anyway.
Yeah, I'll come back in a second. All right, we'll be about 30, 45.
Oops. Anyway. So Johnny he hasn't changed, right? No matter what I say, it's the unknown. There's a girl I like in my institutional channel. I struck a convoy because I saw her friend. They were not good with behavior. As Kelly said, if you want to judge someone, look people they hang with. Well, that's true. That's it. I have to read this again. There's a girl I like in my institution. Shall I struck a convoy because I saw her friend. They were not good with behavior. Yes, Michael would judge someone. Yes, pretty much. Right. The best way, I don't judge anybody, but I'm informed what people are like. All I have to do is look at their children, their dog, and the people they hang with, right? Again, Machiavelli. But the dog is the most important. You see how the dog acts, right? I don't know how long ago it was, but it was just in the last month or so. I was, sitting in my car, and I didn't want the air conditioner on, so I kind of had the door open, right? I was going to get out, but I was looking for stuff, and this dog jumps in my car, and he's like, and I go, buddy, what's wrong? And I start petting him, and he's like, oh, affection, my God, I never felt this. And this guy runs up, you're stealing my dog, right? And I said, no, I'm not. Your dog jumped in my car. You're stealing my dog. Give me my dog. And the dog jumped in the back where all the stuff was, where you couldn't get him. He was like hiding under a box. And this guy is screaming at me. He's got a gun. And I'm gonna kill you. And I said, wait. What's wrong? You don't even know me. You stole my dog. And this cop shows up, and he's a canine cop, right? So his dog is barking, and not at the dog, not at me, but at that guy, right? And so the canine cop comes over. What's going on here, sir? Why do you have that gun? Please put the gun down. Put the gun down on put the gun. He stole my dog. And guy looks at me and goes like, no, I don't think so. And he goes, where's your dog? He says, in his car. And I said, he's here. So I kind of got out, and I'm like hobbling, barely, like holding onto the car so I don't fall over. And I open up the back door, and the dog's under a box, shivering. And the canine cop goes, here, puppy, come here. He's got a little cookie in his pocket. Come here. Good dog. And the dog was a pit, something else mix, and maybe a beagle. It was a really sweet, nice, smart dog. And so the guy gets on the radio, and then all of a sudden there's 6 cops there, and they take that guy down. Go out, sir. And they drag him away, right? And the canine guy called the canine handler truck and came and got that thing. And so now it was in North Carolina. And now I have buddies in the police force in that county, right? So I saw the canine cop, a week or two at Walmart's down there. And because I go down there because I have friends down there. And I have a couple of friends who I've gotten to know since they were 19, and we'd be working at a phone shop. And why is my phone there? So this one kid, I mentored him, and because he was really smart, really good, really great, and yet he was somewhat shy. And I said, no, go, do this, do this, do this. He did all these things, and now he has his own company. He's making like $5,000 a week, and he's married. And he bought a house himself, and back at interest rates was 0. I said, you need to buy a house. So I took him in his neighborhood, and I found this one house that was right on the hood, up the hill. All the rich people were down was the hood. I said, this is right on the line. This is going to be worth some money. So the sign was there. We called him up. The guys, I said, we want to buy this house right now. And his aunt worked at a bank, and I said, call your aunt. And, she worked out a mortgage. So he's got this house that he bought for something like $48,000, 2-acre lot, really nice house. That was a mess, but structurally everything about it was fine. And he bought it, and it's now worth $300,000. He bought it for under 50, right? And his whatchamacallit, mortgage is $200 a month. That's less than what he would pay in rent, right? And so this guy is very thankful because I convinced him to start his own business. I convinced him, I said, when I met his girlfriend, I said, this girl's for you. She really wants to marry you. She really wants to have a kid. Do those, but you want those things too. You're just scared about it. So he's turned out to be the greatest dad, and it's everything's going. So I go down and visit him, and it's a nice ride down there, and it's nice, right? And now that summer's coming around, we're going to go. I know the Blue Ridge Mountains really, really well. So, and they grew up right here. They have never went out there. It's like, what? You never been on the parkway? So anyway, when it gets a little bit warmer, because they just had a baby, so when the kid's, maybe in a month or two, he'll be 6 months old, and the kid's really bouncy and doing great. So anyway, it's all good. So that's how I stumbled into that situation with you stole my dog. And so now when I go down there, and 2 of the cops that responded also work at Walmart. That's what I saw the guy in Walmart. So like, hey, how you doing now, Bob? And so when we put together the community center, I got the 2 universities, ETSU and App State, because I have all these big departments of psychology. ETSU has a medical school, so I'm getting them to come into the community center to bring services to people who really need them. There is no medical care where I'm at. There is no, there's no social services. They close the office, period. The Social Security office that used to be in Johnson City, you have to go to Tennessee State Capitol if you want to. And you have to only get an appointment if you email or call them, and they don't answer the phone and they don't answer your emails. So, how is Johnny? Let's see. Read message above. So unknown, why did you take those messages away? Or did you? Unknown, did you take those messages away? I mean, I read them, so basically you're talking about this girl you like, right? Forget about if you like her, go talk to her like a human being, right? Privacy reasons. Okay. So I'm basically picking up that you like a girl. You're kind of questioning her surroundings, the people she's with. A lot of those things may be out of her control. She may be just the right person for you. So go talk to her, mano y mano, and see who it really is. You know? That's how you do it, right? And you be yourself. Like my young man who I'm talking about 27. He's not quite a young man anymore. But all I kept telling him was just be yourself. Don't worry about it, because that was the thing and that's what our society basically programs, and not just the United States. Because it's not just the United States. We live in a prison planet. You know? How do I start? I never asked to go first. It's quite hard in new surroundings. Okay. So you're attracted to this one girl. So, what you do is if there's any flowers, you pick one flower and said, hey, this is what I think of you. And what her response to you giving her one flower, saying, this is what I think of you. And you say, this is what I think of you, but I don't know you. And I would like to get to know you. That's what you're saying. Right? Or some cute little, I used to do the Japanese art of folding paper into cranes and birds and things like that. So I was at a coffee shop, and some interesting girl kept coming into the coffee shop, and we kind of look at each other or smile or do something. One day I would just be there folding a piece of paper, and I'd make it so whoever walked by would see what I was doing. And if that girl who I was trying to get their attention would stop, say, what are you doing? I would say, I'm just making you a little gift. And it would be a little bird that if you pulled one side, the wings would flap. This is so cool. I said, why don't you sit down? Let's have a cup of coffee. Right? That's how you start it off. Right? And so the basic thing, but how do I start? I never asked a girl first. It's quite hard. Yeah, me too. I like the girl making the first move. It always worked great for me. I never really, that's not true. I would if I found a woman who seemed interesting to me, I would kind of look up and smile, right? But I wouldn't go make the first move, right? And I would and the first move is very subtle when a girl makes it. Like when I met my first wife, I met her on a subway, right? And it's pretty obvious because everyone on the subway was either Hasidic Jew or black. The only Anglos was her and me. She was about 5'6" or so, and I'm about 6'1", and she's wearing this peacoat, this naval kind of peacoat, and it's like going down to her shoes, right? So it's obviously not hers. And I hear this little click, and it's she walks away, and she's got this coat, and she's like doing this, and it's like legal in New York City to take pictures in the subway, but if you get a permit, you can, right? Within all the constructs of culture and art in New York City, I investigated all of them and how I could use them. So I had, licenses and permits, and you name it, I'd have it, right? So when I go do something, I weld a piece of sculpture on the side of a building. And if the cops would stop me from doing stuff like that, I would pull out this permit and say, see, I can do it. She doesn't usually talk or socialize with anyone else except with her group. And it's quite hard, like she's hiding behind a thick wall, which I can't penetrate. Well, okay, so this is a good lesson. My attitude towards everything is I have no expected consequences. No expected outcomes. I'm always looking at the unexpected consequence, but the expected consequence, outcome, I want this to happen. I want to screw, not so much. I let God do everything, Because I don't have a clue what I'm doing, right? So I'm always going, hey, God, I don't have a clue here. Please take the wheel. And that's what happens, right?
I think that's changed. And it was just, like I said,
Well, if she's in her own world, well, it's obvious she's not. It's going to be difficult to get her into your world, especially if she surrounds herself by a wall of social infrastructure of people who you find uncomfortable. So find somebody else. There's plenty of fish in the sea. Go looking for somebody else. It's really the best advice I can give you. If there is no opening for you, then move on. Right? It's not meant to be. Right? Go get yourself a copy of Playboy. So um, that's kind of what it is. It's back in the day when I was an itinerant scholar, and when I was young and got beat up by that nun, murdered by that nun, I ended up in a Maryknoll sanctuary in Garden City for a year and a half. That's why I learned to read Greek. I couldn't speak any of those languages because I can barely speak, because my esophagus was crushed and my jaw was broken and my ear, the little stirrup she broke, and the orbit in my eye. Um, you know, so I see in ways that most people don't see. I hear things that most people, not voices, but this ear that has been damaged. It's like this ear. Yeah, on the screen it's reversed. But anyway, it's not that I hear different frequencies, right? And like if I'm talking to someone, I have to put this ear towards them, in a way that they don't really notice. And this other ear, it's like radar. It's like a Doppler radar, meaning I can tell. I'm like a bat. I can hear things that most people can't hear. I mean, I can hear someone breathing at about 120, 300 feet. Right? I walk through woods, I can hear something breathing, right? 100 to 300 feet away. That's pretty amazing, right? And when I was tested for all this stuff, because I was in the hospital for a month or so, and I was really busted up. And then I got to go to the sanctuary because of Cardinal Cushing. He kind of brought me there, and I stayed there about a year and a half. And these guys tested me for everything you could ever friggin' think about. And then that's how I got, oh, you're going to be a priest. You're going to be a rocket scientist for the Pope. Blah, 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 blah. And so I was on that path until I got to the seminary and realized how corrupt everything was. And I said, and I didn't say, oh, I don't want to do this. I'm going to change this. And that's why I was almost murdered again. Right? So when Johnny goes on about how he's suffering, no, I don't think so. I had my third wife die in my arms. Right? I had another, then I had, my first wife I had on the books, right? And Dom was, impenetrable. So anyway, I basically I see suffering as a tool to it's like a hard edge that I can chisel what I want to be, right? I use it as a tool to make myself better, right? And that's what we're here on this earth. This earth is like a sandbox, it's here. It's for us to train our soul to, and everyone, I was a theologian for a good 10 years, and I've studied every religion. And Thomas Merton became a Catholic priest because of my mother, so he kept being, let's see, undo, try to grab her attention, but it's like, okay, because sir, it's my time to go by. Okay. Come on back, unknown. I'd like to hear what's up. But like I said, there's plenty of fish in the sea, right? And if you open yourself up to that, I've had over 50 really serious relationships with women. I'm in one right now. She's 42. I'm almost 80. I'm almost, twice her age, right? She's got kids and grandchildren, right? but she's works for whatchamacallit, Microsoft, and she works in their nonprofit and responds to catastrophes for Microsoft. And she's like a superhero. She really is, right? And I met her because of what happened down here, and and she saw me interacting with everybody, and from the highest of the high to the most suffering low. And she said, "Wow, I wish I could do what you do." And so she's a triple freaking Virgo. Everything has to be perfect. And if you've seen any of my videos of the deep green in the man cave, she's in sleeping with me, and I wake up and she's like wide awake. And in the deep green in my man cave, there's no light at night. I'm sure you can't even can't see anything. Period. I love that. I love that. And because I'm very sensitive to light, and so I can tell that she's awake. I said, "Honey, you awake?" And she goes, "Oh yeah, I'm awake." She's really awake. I said, "So was I snoring or did I do something?" "Oh no, you're so cute. You're like having a big sleeping next to a big bear. You just kind of, you know, you know, purr, And so I wasn't snoring. No, no, you didn't snore. And so she goes, so I go, "So what's up?" And she goes, "Well, here I am. And this is the second I've been here, and I've seen your place, and it's like disgusting. It's like I can't believe it. But what's truly amazing me is that I'm okay with it. I never can let anything go. I'm letting everything go. It's not bothering me. I don't know. I don't understand why." And I said, "Because this isn't your ick. This isn't your stuff. This isn't your life. And it's not mine. It's just a bunch of stuff that I haven't really gotten rid of, because it has a certain value to it. And I just don't have enough space. I had about 10 different houses. I had probably 60,000 square feet that I had all kinds of stuff in. And I mean, I still have stuff left at the school. And Johnny is whatever. I mean, it's already gone into the ectoplasm of the universe. And anyway, so and she's a person who just kind of grabbed me, and when no one's around and started kissing me, I said, "Okay, I'm ready for this." And so most people can't. So our relationship's really private. I don't really go around here with her, and I don't really go around where she's at, meaning her wherever, her town. That she's been there 20, 30 years, and everyone has their preconceived notions of her. And if they saw me with her, they'd be, "Well, what's going on?"
Okay.
So basically, we have this kind of thing. She knows that I'm always at the deep green by 4 o'clock, right? She'll come down, and she knows that I will. If I'm not there at 4 o'clock, I will be there by 6. So if she shows up at 4, I'm not there. She just kind of parks in her little spot, and she goes and sits on the deck and looks at the beauty that's all around. And then I show up, or I'll be there, right? And so we have a nice time. So we've only really been around, going on a date or been with each other, but it's usually for 2 or 3 or 4 days at a sprint. So about 6 times. And the last time she was with me, she was saying, "This is very interesting. You are the most fun person I've been with that I can think of, right? And because you never talk about yourself unless it connects to something we're talking about. You're never trying to show how groovy you are or whatever. You have this level of confidence that's beyond belief because you don't care. The only thing you care about is when you're with me. The only thing you care about is if I'm feeling good and what me can do to make her feel good. And most of the things we do is I know everything around this neck of the woods for 300 miles. I've been here since the 60s. So I took her to all kinds of places, right? And she's like, "Whoa," right? And we go to places. I can go to some place that I was there 20, 30 years ago, and I still know people there. And we can go there, and that's fine. I mean, that's not, I don't live with those people. They're my friends. I've known them all. It's like my friends who called me up to see if I was dead the other day, right? I've known those people almost 60 years, right? and some of them almost 70 years, right? And so I could take her there because they know me really well, but they haven't seen me in 30 years or 40 years, and so our lives aren't, you know, presently this way. So there's no judgmental thing, right? But there's a potential for loads of fun. So I've taken it to a number of places where there's still people I know, and we cruise into their neighborhoods and go to their homes or their businesses, and we have a great time. Those people just aren't love taking care of me and showing me a good time because that's what I did the whole time. I knew them, and I was the dude or the instigator of fun or the cultural provocateur, all of the above. So here's it's these are the kind of glasses I can afford. At the community center, I mean, like I said, we've thrown away almost more of the stuff than we've given away, and people are like, oh, we can't give that away. I said, well, we got all this stuff. Let's just get rid of it. So anyway, that's what's happening. Um, Again, all those folks, all those young lovers out there, there's plenty of fish in the sea, and if you let the fish swim into your net, you'll have a much better time. And if you can, the whole thing, if you're a woman, all you have to do is navigate yourself towards a guy who will respect and care and want to be with you more. I mean, every woman I was with, you know, my whole life, I've been in situations where I had access to things where people, all the people around me, are trying to impress everybody about themselves, right? Me, I'm just me. I couldn't care less, right? And I was married to my third wife, who died in my arms. She was a fashion designer, right? And we would go to fashion events, that she would have go to because she's a fashion designer, and I would take her to art events or cultural events or to scientific events or to rainbow gatherings or to rock and roll festivals. These are all things not inside her box. And then she learned that she really actually loved all this stuff, right? And one of the reasons why we would go to things that I would take her to, everyone knew me. We would get the super. What do you do? Stuff, and I got a rainbow gathering. So I was involved in a lot of things. I was Shantasina, which is like conflict resolution person. I was on the council that decides this, that, and the other thing. I was a scout. I was a facilitator. I was one of the healers at the, the MASH unit we kind of had. What did we call it? Alternative, I forget the name, but we had a name for it. But anyway, I would take her to all these things, and she just fit in. She loved working in the kitchen, chopping carrots, talking to everybody about this, that, and the other thing. She loved, and she didn't have to like put on the fancy fashion look, but she was always great looking. So I'd be always with a woman like that, no matter how they looked. I was treating them like they because to me, any woman who's with me is, and I feel like I want to be with them, then I'm with them 110%. They are the most beautiful thing in my sight. I mean, no matter who walks, Christy Brinkley walks by when she's like 22, I don't even look, right? So, and if you've gone to seen a bunch of my shows, and when I pull up the photographs of, that period of my life, and I show the woman I'm with, and all the pictures I've shown you guys on this is like just a tenth of what I have. It's scattered all over the place, and it's in lots of devices. Technology changes. Anyway, so 1 hour and 9 minutes and 9 seconds. I love it when that happens. There's one person there and one thumbs up. And so I hope you enjoyed this show. This was a nice little smorgasbord of lots of stuff. And remember, this is a great opportunity for positive change in yourself, your community, and the world around us. Don't worry about it, right? Because all this is an illusion. only real thing is love's co-creation, where you do your best to co-create love for God's universe. Right? Okay. Hope you heard all of that. The microphone was good. I'm gonna say arrivederci, baby. I'll catch you later. Love you guys. And stream.